I'm Ashton Addison from Blockwest Capital for Investment Pitch Media, and today on the Crypto Coin Show, we have Ben Beath, the creator of BattleFly. Ben, welcome to the show, and thank you for taking the time.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Likewise, excited to dive into what BattleFly's been working on. GameFi is really just games are being upgraded with blockchain and DeFi and bringing ownership, financial inclusion, financial growth for people that are actually able to play games. And I feel like we're in amazing times right now. Let's kick off our conversation with just a little bit about what you and your team have built up at BattleFly and are currently working on, and then we'll dive into all things BattleFly.
Yeah, so BattleFly, I think we're now in our 6th month of building. It's an ambitious game. We are looking to build one of the first, I would say, low cost entry, high volume, mass market DeFi games, combining, strategy and depth of gameplay with competition for yield in a way that we hope progresses the sort of P2E journey that's been dominant over the past 12 months or so into something new. And sitting behind that is a bunch of infrastructure that we're also building from you might say, GameFi infrastructure to help power our treasury and help other projects speed up as well. So, yeah, there's a lot we're biting off. As I said, 6 months in, and hopefully, not too far from launching.
Definitely, and yeah, they're no small feat. It takes a while to develop something.
Games are hard.
It's something that's going to retain users and keep people engaged, and not just come out and then people get bored after 2 weeks. So I'm looking forward to seeing what your team's been working on. And you mentioned there about the treasury. I'd love to touch on that later and just the economics of how it will work. But I would love to dive a little bit more first into the game itself. If you have any hints at and explaining a little bit more about BattleFly, I would love to hear that.
Yeah. So look, casting ahead 3 years from now, there'll be a lot more to BattleFly. But where the game starts is in 2 places. The first one is a really fun interactive arcade style game called BattleFly Racer, which will launch in the next couple of weeks. And BattleFly Racer, if you ever enjoyed playing those sort of classic flight simulator games, or like even a Skyfox, you're piloting your BattleFly through a path, trying to collect as much nectar as you can. Nectar is the consumable that powers a lot of our ecosystem. And then not too long after that, we launched what we're calling the main game. We need a better title than that, but that's the working title. And the main game is a DeFi strategy game where you take a BattleFly NFT. There's 30,000 that have been minted in the Genesis phase. And you start to build the best BattleFly you can. You do that by spending time in the garden, collecting mods. And mods are weapons and utilities and shields. And there's 250 mods. So the depth of there's almost an infinite number of builds that you can come up with for your BattleFly. And then when you think you're ready, you go into the Hyperdome, which is our combat arena, where you take on 99 other BattleFlies. And it's a passive strategy game. So you'll spend most of the day, your BattleFly just kind of flying around, but every now and then, about 10 times a day, it will get called to battle. And if you're successful, then you win some of the magic that your opponent has staked. So it's you pay an entry fee to stake in the Hyperdome. If you're successful, you win some of your opponent's magic. If you're unsuccessful, then you lose a little bit of your magic to the opponent. And so, we're introducing the idea of PvP here, right? So, yes, there's yield that people are competing for, but also there's punishment. Like there's loss if you're unsuccessful. Now it happens very slowly because we don't think that the GameFi players are ready yet to kind of wake up and find that their balance, has dipped by a huge amount. They've lost everything. But gradually over the course of a day, if you have a really successful BattleFly, one that you've built, it's performing well, you might make up to 10% ROI in a single day. But the inverse of that is if you have a terribly performing BattleFly and you keep it battling despite that, you could lose up to 10% of your staked amount in a day. Now, you don't have to stay there. Like you kind of, it's a bad decision to stay there losing battle after battle, but it shows sort of the range. And what we're finding in testing is the addition of PvP on top of play to earn kind of really shapes a different and a much more enjoyable dynamic. I think in a sort of bare, softer market environment, people are ready for a bit of blood. They're kind of conditioned for it. So it's not just farming anymore.
Definitely. I like it. And I'm excited to see the main game when it's released. And you mentioned there about gaining magic and losing magic, and also about having the BattleFlies as NFTs. So there's the NFT Genesis Mint, and then is magic a cryptocurrency token, or is that just like an in-game token? How does that work?
Yeah, so look, I think one of the hallmarks of successful design is the constraints that you choose, right? And when we were really like week one, planning this out, we floated this idea of, well, what if we don't have our own token? And what if we design a game that is sustainable and enjoyable and people still want to play without us having to actually distribute a whole bunch of our own token in the first weeks in that typical P2E model? And the reason for doing that is not because we won't ever have a token, but because that constraint has really forced us to build something that we think is going to be sustainable for the long term. Mm-hmm. If you can build something where people enjoy, they have fun, they enjoy the depth of gameplay, then you don't have to sort of flood the early adopters with rewards to incentivize them. And so to make that work, we actually thought, well, let's use a third-party token. And Magic is the token of TreasuryDAO. TreasuryDAO is building this incredible ecosystem of, I don't know, I think last count there was well over 100 projects that are all building, essentially, think of them as Nintendo cartridges for the new metaverse, right? And BattleFly is one of those cartridges that plugs into TreasuryDAO, uses the ecosystem, uses the token Magic, and that's what will power our game. And I think that approach, I think you'll see more and more builders taking that approach because accessing their community, their tokenomics, their emissions has allowed us to focus on gameplay rather than sort of everything else that comes with rolling your own token. Definitely.
I think that's a great strategy, Ben, and I feel like every game in the world having their own cryptocurrency and economy inside and outside of the game, eventually, some of those are not going to be worth too much, or there's a little bit of overvaluation of the game itself for the hype of massive profits in a currency that can be used outside the game, when you really do need to focus on the gameplay, which I think is super important. And I'm curious on, because with the NFTs and with any currency in the game, in a play to earn model, there's play to earn, and then there's like paying to play as well. If you're buying, people are earning and then they're selling it on the secondary market. Somebody's buying those assets to join into the game at a quicker and level up faster. You mentioned at the beginning, low barriers to entry, trying to make it easy for people to play. I'm curious in how deep that, earning aspect of the game, and also just, leveling up quicker in the game is focused on top of the gameplay.
Yeah, it's another one of those design constraints that's been really challenging, but has informed the gameplay. So one of our guiding principles is no pay to win, and the reason for that is because games that allow that very, very quickly lose control of their gamenomics. Inflation, speculation, all those things. Once you unleash that genie, it's very hard to put it back in. So what that means for us is, time is one of the things that people can invest. The more time you spend on the game, learning about the strategies, the better you'll become. You can't really go in and buy better mods and start winning battles. Every BattleFly comes out of its cocoon with essentially the same level of skill. They'll have different mods, but it'll be a roughly even chance in battle. I really like that idea of when I say low cost entry, is people who they might be from emerging economies, or they might be brand new to NFTs or GameFi, and rather than spend $3,000 on an NFT to get to the game, with BattleFly you're spending more like $30 to $100 to get your cocoon, to get your BattleFly, then you're in the game. And then it's on you to play the strategy right, to farm, get the right mods, battle well, battle intelligently, build the ROI up, and then you might have a BattleFly that you can sell for, a lot more. And there'll always be players who don't want to do the work, right? Who come in and just want a BattleFly that's already battle tested, good ROI, great mods. But I guess the point is that they can't buy that golden ticket without. There's no sort of magic unicorn loot box they can flip to get that. It's someone has to do the work at some point. So that. Yeah, I think it's a really good part of our game. There'll be a lot of people who enjoy just taking cocoons and turning them into great BattleFlies and then selling them to people who are maybe a bit more time poor or a bit more impatient.
Definitely, yeah. No, I like that strategy, and there's a little bit of something for everybody. And now you mentioned that your team's been hard at work on the development of the arcade game and the main game. What is the major achievements that you need to get done in the near future here to get to that point of the release?
Yeah, so our combat engine is done, which is just a huge milestone. I think a lot of GameFi projects over the last year have shipped with underdeveloped combat mechanics. The meta has been figured out really quickly, and so we've essentially tried to build something that because there's so many permutations to it, we're going to be well ahead of our players in terms of them figuring out the meta. So that's a big milestone. The next part is really just getting the RNG, working really well and just balancing those last parts. Because essentially what happens with BattleFly is if you win a lot, then your battery of your BattleFly depletes faster, and you need nectar to recharge. And nectar plays an increasing role as we get into season 2, as it starts to become essential for breeding and things like that. If you're losing more than you're winning, then you're probably getting a lot of nectar, which you can then sell to people who are winning in order so they can recharge. So there's this really fine balancing of our economy and this sort of opportunity cost that we're calibrating, and we're not far off having that ready, but we don't want to launch until we know it's absolutely solid, because it's again one of those things that's hard to correct once you're live. Definitely,
and I like that cooperation there between the losers and the winners, and even if you're losing, you're getting something that the winners need, which I think is really fascinating. And we spoke a little bit about Magic and the TreasuryDAO and how that fits. The Magic is used for a whole arcade of games. I'm curious on the future plans for interoperability or metaverse and NFTs being able to be functioned outside of the specific main game in the bigger picture.
Yeah, so we one of the things that BattleFly will look to do quite quickly after we launch is start to go cross-chain, and still using Magic as our token, but enabling players on other L2s and protocols to play the game, because we think that's going to be important to achieving scale. We're in talks with a lot of different metaverse projects that are particularly ones that are looking to build out 3D worlds, who want to bring the BattleFlies into their world in some way. And typically, one of those examples is a project that is keen to use BattleFly, as a sort of a courier between worlds to actually transport things. So you'll need a BattleFly NFT in order to actually move objects between different worlds. That's a sort of a fun type of interoperability. It's very character driven. For us, we're bringing projects in that can help us enrich our gameplay. So we're working with a couple of projects at the moment. That are essentially going to be able to stake their NFTs within our gardens, and the effect of those gardens having those NFTs will start to be mutations. And so things like rarity and new traits and exclusive mods will all come about because of this interoperability with other NFT projects. We've got over 90 partners and collabs for season 1. Projects that have built and designed their own BattleFlies, their own custom wing art. So we've got a lot of territory to cover with this. It's quite exciting.
Definitely, yeah. There's a lot to do, and so for the viewers to follow along with the launch and for the minting of the BattleFlies, in the initial phase, what is the best way for people to follow along to make sure that they don't miss that time frame?
Yeah, so following us on Twitter at BattleFly Game is a really good place to start. You'll find there the link to our Discord, which is buzzing. We've got a really vibrant community that are really starting to get hyped as we get close to launching the games. We've already minted the Genesis cocoons, but there's because we have 30,000 of them, they're readily available on secondary markets, and yeah, I think picking one of those up, starting to read our white paper, which is you want to get a couple of cups of coffee to prepare for that one. It's a beast because there's a lot we cover off in that. But yeah, it's worth doing. If you're somebody who likes strategy, if you enjoy playing poker, for example, and the balance of strategy, pattern recognition, luck, psychology that poker gives, then you'll probably love BattleFly, because there's a bunch of us building it that have I think drawn quite heavily on some of what makes poker work as a game and as an enduring game for a long time.
Very interesting. Great, Ben. I will also leave the Twitter and the Discord links for BattleFly in the description box below to make it easy for the viewers. All the best on the work your team's doing leading up to the game launches, and let's follow up in the near future.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ashton.